Hi, welcome back to the workshop for the next episode in the Micawber Telecaster build. So I might have said in the last episode that this time I was going to be doing the frets. However, having had a think about it, what I'm going to do is spend a bit more time going through the process of thinning out the headstock and fitting the tuners. Now I didn't buy these tuners and I'm a little bit unsure of exactly kind of what they are in terms of the dimensions. There was no kind of dimensions on the packaging, so I just want to do a couple of little checks before I start cutting or drilling. And the first one is that the minimum distance between the washer and the back of the tuner where it sits against the back of the headstock is less than the proposed thickness of our headstock, and this is, the headstock's going to be 15mm and the minimum distance here is 14, so it's not much, but there's a mil. And the second one is, I just want to check the length of the screw to make sure that that's not longer than the proposed thickness of our headstock, and that's only 10mm, so there's absolutely loads of room to spare with that. Okay, with that done, we can start to think about marking this out and getting the holes drilled. So the template's clamped onto the neck, but I know that this is an old template and a couple of the holes in the middle aren't quite as accurate as they used to be, but the two outside holes are fine. So all I'm going to do is use a little transfer punch that fits those holes perfectly, and I'm going to mark the two outside holes like that. And then I'm going to use those center points to mark my line. Now the distance between the two center points is 122mm. So what I now need to do is divide that by 5 so that I can equally space out the rest of the tuners and mark those center points with a pair of dividers. Okay, so 122 divided by 5 gives you 24.4mm. So I've set my dividers up as close as I can get it, and I'm just going to step off the individual marks for the tuners. Spot on. And then just establish those a bit better with the awl. Okay, we can now get this to the drill press. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is use a 3mm drill bit to drill right the way through the headstock where I've marked. I'm using a 3mm because it's just about thick enough to not deflect when I'm drilling through, so I should get a nice straight hole through. Ideally you'd want a smaller pilot hole, but the risk you run there is that it'll bend and the hole that comes out the front won't be in line with the hole in the back. Okay, so I've drilled those through and I've checked them on the front and they all look really, really nice. So happy with that so far. So the next thing is I'm going to take this 10mm drill bit, which is the size of the bushing on the back of the tuner, and I'm going to drill into the back of the headstock, probably about 10mm, so we get good clearance for those. With the backs now drilled to size, I'm going to drill through from the front. Now these need to be 8.5mm, but I'm going to start with a 4.5 and then work my way up through the drill bits in kind of 1/2 mil increments, so I get a nice clean cut without any tear out. Okay, so there they are fitted. They all line up really, really nicely. It's a little bit of tweaking to do just to get them perfect, but that's all good. I haven't been able to put the fixings on the front because the headstock is far too thick still, so that's our next job, is to get that all thinned out. Right, on to getting this headstock thinned down. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a gauge line in. Now this gauge line is slightly over the final thickness that we actually want, so it will give us a little bit of room for manoeuvre, but I'm just going to run that along the top. Right the way around the bottom. I've kept it away from the area where we're going to transition into the fingerboard. And with that done, I'm just going to take a nice sharp pencil and darken that line in. And I'm just going to put a little bit of tension on this rod because I'm sick of hearing it rattle. It's annoying. Okay, so with that marked out, I'll take it to the bandsaw. Okay, so regular viewers will be pleased to hear that I've got myself a new bandsaw blade. So I'm not expecting too many problems with this, but it is kind of quite a tricky cut to make. So what I'm going to do in the first instance is I'm just going to cut probably to about there, and then I'll snip that bit off, and then we'll get it to the bobbin sander. Okay, to make sure that I'm going to sand this in nice and square, I've attached the neck parallel to this length of timber so that when I pass it through the drum sander and it hits this transition area, it'll sand in a square edge towards the back of the nut. And I've set my spindle sander up with a fence to make this cut, so that the board that I've prepared will sit square with the fence and we can sand the transition in that way. Now it's really important, if you've got one of these and you want to do something like this, that you put the fence on the right side. This turns that way, so it rotates in that direction. So the drum, if the fence is on this side, is pushing back against my workpiece. If I was to put my fence on this side, this would be drawing it in. And what would quite quickly happen is that you would draw your workpiece through the machine into the nearest wall, pet, friend, etc. So make sure you're working safe and put your fence on the right side. Okay, let's see how we've done. Get off this board. Okay, so that's come out really nicely. The distance between this transition and the back of the nut is nice and even. It's not too bad for flatness. It will need a little bit of finish sanding just to get it spot on, but mostly got to be happy with that. So I'm just literally going to give it a quick tickle up, just take any sharp edges off. And then we can continue with fitting the tuners. Okay, so with that done, I've just aligned these with a ruler on the back, and they're all lined up really nicely now. So I'm going to put a little flag onto my drill bit. Just double check my positioning. Very carefully drill into the headstock. Now these screws are absolutely tiny and they are quite easy to break, so I've just stuck a bit of wax onto them. To help them go in a bit easier. Bring you in a bit closer and we'll repeat that process for the rest of them. As well as the wax on these screws, just feel how they're going in. With a screw this size, any tightness at all, take it out, re-drill your hole. I'm also checking the alignment on these as I go along, just to make sure it's spot on. And there they are. I'm happy with those, they've gone on very nicely. Okay, so I'm going to leave this one here now. It might not seem like we've made a huge amount of progress, but these are a couple of tricky little jobs that are fraught with difficulty. So I'm really happy with the way that they've come out. I'm going to be back very shortly with the next episode where I actually will get the frets put in this time. So I look forward to seeing you then. As always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.